Bangi says, what is the racial wealth gap? Is it rising or is it declining?
Well, race as a social construct is about creating racial hierarchy. So the point of institutional racism is, one, to maintain the racial wealth gap, but that gap is going to increase. So as opportunities, look at England now. After Brexit, we weren't actually privy to the fact that legislation changed around the naturalization laws. So if your mother wasn't born in this country, you're not even a British citizen. Never mind that you even have a passport, you can be deported if you commit the most minor of infractions. Now, because we're not aware of that necessarily, we don't even realize that racism keeps us in a particular position. Now, the more we become embroiled in the matrix, their system, the less we control over that racial wealth gap. The only way you can close that racial wealth gap is by creating parity. And to create parity, you have to own your own vehicles. So herein comes talking about Asians, talking about Jews, looking at Green Lanes and talking about the Turkish community. They own their own vehicles. This is what gives them parity with English people. We aren't realizing economic parity because we refuse to adopt our own vehicles. It's like there is some hope or faith that an English system based on decency will do what it's never done, and it never will. So thereby, the wealth gap will continue to grow. Now, if our children are indoctrinated into schools that fail our children more and more by design, not by default, but by design, where our children can be put into pupil referral units or now custody centers from the age of 12, not for committing crimes, but because the schools and the teachers just can't be bothered with us. So imagine this child who's entered into that system competing with a child who is protected, where all of the 21st century innovations are wrapped around that child's life, and then saying they hadn't even started. This is England. This is a first world country. We all had the same education. We don't, but we continue to pretend because we fail to analyze what is actually being done systemically. So systemically, the racial wealth gap is on the increase, and it will continue to increase, where in a decade's time will be a permanent underclass. Now, with the erasure of cash and the adoption of central banking digital currencies, which all Western nations have adopted, including the Bank of England, they just haven't come on stream because of security issues. So when China stops hacking everybody's blockchains, we will have a digital currency that offers the state complete control over all citizens, because you can be turned off. So the wealth gap is on the increase, and that will turn us into a criminal class instead of a working class if we stay on the same trajectory that we're on and refuse to escape the matrix. Not all of us. It's only choice. It's not by force. So whoever chooses to adopt a system which is specifically created for them will benefit from it, because then we create our own parity. We go after government contracts as a people, which makes us an easily identifiable economic group, which currently we're not. We're not an identifiable economic group. We're definitely not a respected economic group. We aren't even aware what our contribution is to the UK GDP.
Thank you. We have another question again for you, Dean, and thank you for your comments, and thank you for your questions. We thank you for joining us on the Extraordinary Achievers show, and we thank you for being part of change. In today's program, we are trying to have the first step towards change. Melissa says, is transracialism another reason for our downfall as a Black race?
There's no such thing as transracialism. Race is firmly rooted. So if you get stopped by a policeman, they are going to identify you as an IC3 as opposed to an IC1. So there is no transracialism in the UK. We are separated and segregated by a system. So if you look on the scale, they go up to IC7, we are IC3. So we don't live in a post-racial society, and there is no transracialism. What we did, though, to weaken ourselves was enter into the system of adoption, which was championed by Martin Luther King. And that is one of the biggest reasons that we failed, because of slavery and the resulting effects of having a colonial educational curriculum, we feel less than. So that makes us approval junkies. So no matter we came over in the 50s and experienced initial success through partners, self-determination in being able to purchase homes and create businesses, we gave it all away the minute England realized we were worth money and offered us bank accounts. So then they offered us mortgages at a profit, a huge profit, and then home ownership actually went down. So because we seek to assimilate so much based on our need for approval, which is because we've never applied the psychological and spiritual reparations to ourselves as a people, as a byproduct of the African Holocaust that led to the slave trade, and then all of the oppression that happened after that. So some could call it an excuse. Why do individuals escape? But it's the same argument as Grenfell, isn't it? Few individuals will escape, but by the design of the construction, most of the people will perish in a fire because it wasn't created with them in mind to escape. So understanding the nature of systems will enable us to circumvent the effects of racism, to circumvent the effects of the wealth gap, and circumvent the effects of any form of oppression from Europeans, because we can revert to our own socioeconomic systems that work specifically for us because they were designed for us to flourish, as opposed to us buffering their system as something other than, which is why they can just put us on a plane and deport us. And don't think they couldn't do that to the entirety of our almost 3 million population tomorrow.